Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Crady, the Vice President for Enrollment and Student Affairs here at the University of Montana. So what I'd like to do is take you through our enrollment from this past year, and I just want to go through some highlights here that I think are important. So the numbers we're going to talk about are headcount numbers right now, and then I'll show you FTE equivalents as we go throughout the report. The bottom line is that we're down, and right now you can see that if you look at our headcount numbers, are down 4.8%. And if you look at first-time entering freshmen, that's an area of big focus for me since I arrived in July. And to give you an idea, when I came in July, I specifically focused on next year's enrollment, not this year's enrollment. And let me tell you why. The national deadline for students deciding where they go to college is actually May 1st, okay? And once you get beyond about May 15th, there is little ability to actually influence college choice. So when I came in, what was most important for me is to review our current processes, look at what we can do differently, and then implement a lot of new strategies, which we've already done that I'll talk to you about soon. So, the format of this discussion will be relatively short. My comments will be short. But at the same time, I'd like you to ask questions, and I don't think you should hesitate to do that. So if we go through the enrollment numbers, they're up on the screen. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can see that we have up there our head count and our FTE count, which is that up there? Okay. Here we go. And I'll give you a breakdown by the Mountain Campus, Missoula College, and total new freshmen. And we'll go a step further so you can take a look at this. And I assume that you have those numbers. Are those numbers distributed?
They've just been posted online.
Okay.
And some of them are referred to in the press release.
So, obviously, from my point of view, the enrollment is a concern, and I have to be frank about that. The numbers are in a downward trend. But what I would tell you is I'm very confident, given what I know now and the work that I've done with some great staff members sitting in the back of the room here, that we're going to be able to improve and specifically focus on our first-year incoming students. And that is most important to me. So what are we going to do? We have already implemented a lot of different strategies that nobody knows about because we want the element of surprise, so to speak. So the first thing that we've done is we are now involved with a program called Raise Me. And Raise Me is a micro-scholarship program that allows students in 9th grade to sign up on the Raise Me site and be awarded micro-scholarships. So if you get an A, we give you money, like $25, what are the ranges, guys? $25 to $50. If you're involved in leadership activities, we do that as well, and a number of other areas that we will give you micro-scholarships for. Now, why is that important? Beginning in the 9th grade, we want students to know that you have the possibility of attending a university. And so if you work with students early enough and you provide incentives to engage them, which we are doing through the Raise Me website, it keeps students coming back. Now, to give you an idea of what the metrics are on that is, we released Raise Me 2 weeks ago. We did no marketing. In our first week, we had over 1,000 students sign up. And the most recent number is about the 1,900 mark. And we've done no marketing for that whatsoever. But it does give the opportunity for low-income, first-generation student like me, when I went to college, the ability to understand that there's money available and that college or university attendance is a possibility. So that's very, very important to us. So the goal is to really engage students at the earliest possible point. And some people ask me, well, when did you begin engaging students? Typically, in the past, we have engaged students in the second semester of the junior year. Now, from my point of view, that's a period of time where people have generally developed their short list of colleges to go to. Now, we've moved back our marketing to begin recruiting students in the first semester of the sophomore year. And so that's what we're going to focus on. In addition to that, this week, we will be releasing our first paper application. Now you might be saying, oh my gosh, paper, why are we doing that? That's crazy. So what does that really mean? It's an application that we send out to 34,900 students in the next week that tells students that we are very interested in them and we want them to come to the University of Montana. That application, you get a username and a password, so it's a 2-page application, and it takes you to a website, and when you log in, your information is actually pre-populated on the screen, so what you have to do to apply is very easy. And so that application right now is at print and will be stuffed and will be mailed out to every single student that we have in our database from the state of Montana, and also our top recruiting markets that we consider to be what I call our overlap schools, or schools where students apply to the University of Montana but also apply to these schools. Then in addition to that, we're taking 10,000 of those names and we're developing new markets. So 5,000 applications will go to a new market, which I'm not going to tell you about. And the other 5,000 will go to another new market. And my experience with that is a good admissions office really focuses on developing new markets every year. My goal is to try to work in a fashion where we're able to look at 2 new markets every year and try to develop them. We know that the number of 18-year-olds in some states is declining. Moody's bond rating service in the upper Midwest has rated that area negative for higher education, and so we have to go to where the students are. Now, once we collect those applications, what we will do is then follow up and determine where we're going to recruit mid-cycle. So we have the ability to figure out what that's going to be, and then we can send recruiters there if we have a good cohort of students. The second, probably the most important thing that I've done since I've been here is to really focus on admission operations. And what is admission operations? Admission operations is the backroom stuff that you never see. So the minute that we get an application to the minute we admit you and how we encourage you to become a student at the University of Montana. And I've heard this since I've arrived, and I'll be just frank about this. We've heard that there have been operational problems, that people don't get information in a timely fashion, and that we need to work on that. So we're in the process of hiring 2 new evaluators that'll be up and running here in the next couple weeks to help us process applications more quickly. Now, the area that we bind up in applications is really in the transfer student area. So it allows us to focus our recruiting efforts this year on first-year incoming students. Okay, and they could be traditional students or non-traditional students. Now, the good news about where we are with our enrollment, and I'll be honest, I'm very concerned about it, is we did meet our adjusted budget number. Okay, so you need to understand that. So from my point of view, I knew coming in that we were going to be in a tough situation with that, but the number one thing I focus on is whether or not we're going to hit our budget target. And for all practical purposes, we surpassed that today. So that's good news from my point of view. So what is the problem and what do we do? I mean, why do we have these problems? So if you look at the way we recruit, what we're trying to do, and I'll just give you some numbers about this that I think you'll find helpful. We have, for this last cycle, for undergraduate applications, we had 5,623 students apply. Okay? And then we admitted 4,504 students. The size of our applicant pool is simply too small. Okay? And what that means is that we have to literally double the number of applications that we receive. So the application strategy is really designed to do that. I would like to see us in the next 18 months be at 10,000 applications for undergrad. And the reason why that's important is we have more students to admit. Now, if you look at our in-state numbers, the applications from this year to last year were almost identical, but our yield dropped. We lost 157 students, which indicates, and the general rule of enrollment is, that if you're going to try to continuously enroll the same number of students, you have to increase your applicant pool at about 6% per year. And that's what we have not done. So the strategies that I talked about, I've used elsewhere. They've been effective elsewhere. I have not used them in the West, so I can't promise you anything. But I would say that I'm cautiously optimistic about this. So at this point, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to open it up for questions. Yes?
Do you have, has the administration given you basically carte blanche to say, we need to increase enrollment? Tom, go for it.
They absolutely have. Yes.
Okay, and what did you take that to mean?
I am doing stuff that I need to be done, and I don't have to check with anybody. And the President Engstrom has been awesome in that regard. When I interviewed for the position last spring, I would describe the University of Montana as a gem, and the reason for that is the out-of-state reputation is awesome. You may not know that, but I've worked at Grinnell College. I was dean of the college at Dartmouth. I was a vice president at a college in Minnesota. And the narrative outside the state is extraordinarily positive. If you look at that and you look at that component, and you look at the tremendous faculty that we have, and then you look at our offerings, and then you look at our price. Our price is unbelievably low compared to other states, without question. And to give you an idea, if I can attract a student to Iowa at a tuition cost of $55,000 a year, I would be disappointed if I can't attract a student to Montana given our cost structure. So, yeah.
Hi. So according to expenses from fiscal year 2017, we've spent over $1 million on benefits and laying people off. When does that even out?
I can't answer any budget questions. I mean, it's not. I'm on the budget committee. I had my first budget committee meeting yesterday, so I just don't feel equipped to be able to answer that question. As it pertains to enrollment, I could talk about that. But I will tell you this: every discussion that I've been in where people are concerned is related ultimately to enrollment. So if a department doesn't have money and they're trying to negotiate other things, what it comes down to is our low enrollment. And so if I want to raise the boat here, I have to increase our enrollment. Yeah?
Your assessment that our reputation, the university's reputation, is very good outside the state, what's that based on?
That is based on many years of experience in the field and spending time on the road at college fairs talking to high school counselors and the fact that we're a flagship university. When I heard the University of Minnesota, I'm also a Higher Learning Commission reviewer, so I'm part of teams in the Midwest that go out and reaccredit colleges and universities. What you hear, or what I've heard, and this is anecdotal, I get it, there's no scientific research that would back this up, but when I say Montana, they're like, wow, that's a good school. And remember, when you look at U.S. News and World Report rankings, how they get those rankings is by contacting deans, vice presidents, enrollment deans, that sort of thing. And it comes through that way. Excuse me. So, I think we have an incredible story to tell. And I think that, with our marketing and the realignment of a new application process, and then working on campus to alleviate any difficulty students may have during the matriculation process is extraordinarily important. So to give you an example, we have many holds that we can place on students. You didn't pay your bill, you owe 78 cents at the library, that sort of thing. Tomorrow I'm eliminating all holds on campus with the exception of holds related to life and safety and those holds related to state and federal requirements. So that will reduce our holds to about 7 or 8 holds on campus. Okay? And right now we have well over 50. The other thing I did that I thought was extremely important is we would get to a certain point with students where had you not paid your bill, your registration would be canceled. Okay? And I've decided that that was not a good policy, and last Friday, maybe 2 weeks ago now, I canceled the cancellation policy. So we want students to come from high school and have a smooth integration into college. And I could not have done this had President Engstrom said to me, you can do whatever you want, okay? You need, if you see impediments for retention or enrolling students, fix them. And I'm not somebody who sits idly by on this stuff. If you're going to give me the authority to do it, I'm going to take every opportunity to do what I need to do.
So just ask a quick follow-up. Do you feel like the hit that the university's reputation took from the Department of Justice involvement with the sexual assault investigations, John Cracker, do you feel like that's in the past, or do you still feel like that's a challenge for the university to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would tell you is that we have kind of a model program right now when it comes to dealing with issues of sexual violence, and we have a good story to tell there. Do I think it is an aspect that is hurting our enrollment? I'm doubtful about that right now. What I'm more concerned about that might hurt our enrollment is our processing and how we handle applications and the internal workings of moving what we call acquisitions when we buy names to inquiries where we get them, they've raised their hand and said we're interested, and then moving through the application process, it's a bit cumbersome. And so we're trying to smooth that process out. You don't ever want it to stop in one area. We call it binding up. And so what we're trying to do is really working at those pressure points and alleviating those bottlenecks so we can respond in a timely fashion to students. I often hear that my registration didn't make it through. I don't know what the status is. I got my admit letter after I was enrolled in summer school and I'd already been attending classes. We're fixing that. And we're doing that in a positive way. So the good news from my point of view is that doesn't cost any money. It simply means that we have to readjust our processes and move forward. So do I think that the issues related to the Krakauer book are having an effect on our enrollment? I would say not as much as I would have said, when it happened, but I think we're moving into a new phase where we can really make a difference when it comes to recruiting students. Yep. Yes.
The micro scholarships that are offered to high school freshmen, are there local schools that are participating in that? Do schools approach you? Do you approach other schools? How can that?
Yeah, the way it works is, so there's a Raise Me website, okay, nationally, and students can sign up for these micro scholarships, and we have not even advertised them. And we've already seen a tremendous amount of growth. But it's a Gates Foundation funded program that I think is really, really great for first generation low income students in providing accessibility to college given the cost of higher education today. But students have found that site on their own. And when students realize they can get money through a website, let me tell you, they use it. And so what we've seen so far is that actually we're kind of blown away by the fact that we had so many students when we had not even sent out an email about it. So, but it's kind of a college matching thing. So if you were to log into Raise Me here, what would happen is the schools around the area would pop up, and then all of a sudden you'd say, "Wow, University of Montana has we can put our grades in and get micro scholarships from the University of Montana." Yes.
I wonder if you know what the demographic projections are for Montana's high school students, future university students,
yeah.
And what percent would you like to see comprised of out-of-state students in the future? What's the right ratio that you would like to see?
Well, we'd like to see over 50%. And what we need to do within the state of Montana is really do a good job of recruiting all of our students. We have counselors literally going to every single high school within the state. But then we need to make sure that when students apply here, that the application process goes smoothly and that we provide resources when question points come up about applying for financial aid. The federal government just moved into what we call prior. And prior is now a process where parents can use a previous year's tax return for their financial aid or their FAFSA. And so it allows us to work with students at a much earlier point in the admission process. And so I'm excited about that. There was a lot of fear that colleges and universities wouldn't know how to handle it. So far, from our point of view, it's going quite well. Yeah.
So numbers are down. What kind of cuts in are we expecting cuts of classes, and are we expecting more layoffs?
Well, I think what I said before is that the university budgeted for this. So at this point, we're doing quite well. And it doesn't mean that we won't have to reallocate money in some areas. That's been done regardless of what the enrollment is. But that, we were smart enough to anticipate that, and we feel good about the fact that we are where we are. Yeah?
You might have said this as well, but when do you expect the enrollment numbers to turn around? What does spring look like and fall a year from now? And what is ideal enrollment?
Sure. The ideal enrollment is more. I mean, I just have to when people say, what are your targets? I'm like, a lot. So I'm not going to give you targets at this point because, we're at the point where we need as many students as we possibly can. And I'm sorry, Kayla, what was the first one?
What does spring look like? And what does fall look like? And when do you expect? We're not even plateauing now, which is what Maine was looking for in spring.
Sure.
When can we expect to at least plateau and maybe start?
Well, my goal would be to do it as quickly as possible. The strategies that I've talked about when I've deployed them in the past have had a pretty immediate effect. But I don't want to promise anything that I can't deliver. So I'm always a little bit worried to try to, offer projections when I haven't worked in the West before. I mean, I fly fish out here, but, I just don't know. I mean, my goal is to stabilize enrollment and increase it in a modest fashion for next year. Whether or not I can accomplish that, we'll see.
Have you been keeping track of all of what MSU has been doing? I know they have programmatically they have some advantages that we don't have right now, but they obviously have taken advantage of what's happened at the University of Montana to boost their own enrollment. So are you looking at them at all, or is your single focus just what's happening here?
No, I probably know Montana State better than they do. And, they use a company for their direct marketing, which is called Royal & Associates out of Richmond, Virginia. And I worked with Royal for the past 17 years, so I know the game plan. And from my point of view, they've been very effective. I give them credit for that. But at the same time, we're competing for students, and we're going to do what we think is right to get the job done, and that's what we're focusing on. So not only am I paying attention to exactly what they're doing and their scholarship levels and stuff, I'm doing that with all of our top overlap schools. And an overlap school means that we have schools where a student applies to one school and then a student applies to another school, and we try to figure out what that is. Now, that used to be on the FAFSA 2 years ago, and the feds got rid of it because they were concerned that we were, undermining each other. But we have other mechanisms that we can use to try to figure out what that is. So, I'm not only, if you go to College Results Online, and I would encourage you to do this, you can put into a box all the top schools that we overlap with and compare all the metrics. What our in-state, out-of-state costs are, our retention rates, the program development. People have often said to me, you don't have STEM, what are you going to do? Well, we do have STEM. I call it science, technology, entrepreneurship, and mathematics. Okay? And, what parents are most concerned about today is, will my son or daughter be living at home after they graduate from college? I have a sophomore in college right now, and what I would tell you is entrepreneurship here is incredible. It's a massive asset for us, and so we really need to focus on that. And then if you look at computer science, we know that the job market for computer scientists or software engineers is way high. My son is a software engineer in Minneapolis-St. Paul, graduated in physics. And he works for Crady, the big supercomputer company, and he writes code all day. I don't know how he does it, but that's what he does. So, there are awesome opportunities at the University of Montana. And when people say STEM, you think it's only one thing. It's not. We have great not only programs in liberal studies, but we also have great programs in all the science areas that I think are crucial. And nobody can tell me that a liberal arts education does not prepare students for life. When you go out and interview at businesses and national corporations, they want to know whether or not you can work as part of a team. The other thing I would say is we're not overcrowded. Okay? And if you're overcrowded, you have a miserable experience. You get 3 people placed in a room designed for 1. You get situations where you can't get into classes. You may have to go a 5th year. Let me tell you, we have a 16-to-1 faculty-student ratio, and I'm excited about that. Yeah?
You touched on no longer removing students, registered students, for missing payment. Can you elaborate on how the students will be worked with, how that tuition will still be paid while still maintaining their enrollment?
Sure. So, if we cancel students because they didn't make their first payment, it could be somebody like me who's so busy I just forgot to do it, which I've done in the past. And so why would we penalize a student for something that we can figure out a different process for that has a little impact on whether or not they want to stay in school? And so if you cancel students, you're basically telling them to go home. Okay? And that's not who we are. Who we are, we want to make sure that we do everything we can from a high-touch point of view to ensure that students have a successful transition from high school to college and that they have a successful first semester. Yeah?
Will the numbers from this fall be reflective of that change in policy?
No. When I came in, so the way I kind of look at things is, your applications will tell you pretty early whether or not you're going to meet your class. And if you don't have the proper number of applications to work with, it's very difficult to make your enrollment. There was no way for me to make a lot of change. I did have members of the staff who were calling students throughout the summer, really encouraging good orientation processes, trying to work through getting students enrolled on campus and doing all of that. Those are all best practices. But at the end of the day, if you don't have enough applications, you're not going to make your enrollment. And so the number one focus for me at this point is to ensure that we have an applicant pool that's large enough to be able to allow us to work with the students that we admit.
I guess like students whose classes weren't canceled 2 days ago with this policy, would they still show up on this census?
Oh, yeah.
Even though they haven't paid yet?
Well, what they've done is they've worked out a bill plan. Yeah, so. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your... Kayla?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to circle back to projections.
Mm-hmm.
And you said stabilization is the goal for this
Yep.
year and then increase for next year. But what realistically might that increase look like?
I honestly have no idea. What I would tell you from my previous jobs, I'm not going to tell you what from my previous jobs. It's been a lot. But I've been able to increase applications fairly dramatically at other places. But I'm reluctant to say exactly what that would be because I'm in a completely different area of the country. But I have some very good friends who are retired who can advise me on this out in California, Oregon, Washington, and I rely on what they have to say. Plus, my staff has a great sense of what our markets are. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Has the president set an expectation of what it might look like?
Stabilize and increase the enrollment, which I told him I think that should be our goal. So he didn't tell me that. Okay. No, there's no number. I mean, the numbers are low, so we just simply need to turn them around.
Well, but I'm guessing it's not realistic to say 20%. You'll see an increase of 20% next fall, but realistically, 1%, 4%.
I would sure like to see a stable enrollment with a 3% increase.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Now, I know it's pretty early on still for your tenure here at UM, but have you so far been able to identify what you could say would be the biggest hurdle to increasing enrollment here?
Yeah. We thought about that a lot, and what I would tell you, the biggest hurdle for me right now is operations, admission operations, backroom stuff. And the good news about that is that, we process paper applications, and I've taken 2 admission offices paperless in my career, and we will be paperless by January 1st. And the reason why you're paperless is you don't have to look for documents. Documents come in a PDF form, or they're scanned, they're linked to a student. We have 2 screens on our desk. You can look at the documents and admit a student on the other screen. And if you're paperless, it significantly reduces the time that you touch an application. And so that is the internal goal for what we're focusing on right now, and we are making our goals week by week with that. So I'm pretty excited about it. I realize the enrollment report is down, but I have to tell you, I'm very optimistic about what we can do in the future. And if I said anything else, it would be wrong. Given our price, given our market position, given where we are, I think that this university has a tremendous amount going forward that is positive, and we intend to capitalize on that and make sure we get it out to all prospective students.